Kia ora koutou. My name is Akant and I'm from this building. I'm on the second floor here. I'm Associate Professor of Marketing in the Department of Management, Marketing and Entrepreneurship, which is a pretty big mouthful. And Bill came to me last week and he asked, we've got this space, we'd like someone to talk about how to become an outstanding lecturer, and unfortunately all the outstanding lecturers have gone, so you're left with me for this session. And I think it's a pretty big ask to do a seminar or a lecture on how to become an outstanding teacher in less than an hour or whatever I have. So hopefully by the end I can at least not make you the worst teacher on earth. And so that's maybe the subtext of what we're doing here. And I appreciate there's a lot of people who are coming from different faculties, different areas, and so I've not made this discipline specific. I've not said this is how you teach marketing, this is how you teach management, or whatever it might be. There will be specifics within your area that are going to be something you would need to develop as time goes on, but I'm going to try and make this as generic as possible and as useful for as many people as possible. I'm more than happy for these slides to be used by you guys, so if you want me to email them to you, Bill, or you can get the video later, I'm happy with that as well. So the first question I tend to think students might ask is, why should you even listen to me? So this is a very brief background if I've not met you before. Some of you have seen me too much. I apologize already, Maya, that you're coming to another one of my seminars, but some of you may not have met me before. I started my PhD over 10 years ago now at the University of Auckland. I was in industry for a couple of years before that, and I did my PhD in marketing there, and I got my first academic post at the University of Bath in the UK in about 2006. And so I've had a few years of experience. Part of the doctoral program at Auckland, which I really enjoyed in our department, was that they created you into an academic, not a researcher. So even though I was doing my PhD, I also had a contract to teach as well. And I also had to go along to various meetings and try and balance out the administration. They didn't give me too much administration, which was good. My focus was still the research, but I had to do some teaching and everything. So when I came out of my PhD, I had a CV that said, here are the papers he's published, here's the PhD he's done, here's the teaching he's done, and you know what, he's done some course coordination as well. So a much more rounded academic. The problem I see a lot of the time is that we get people coming out of their PhD program, excellent researchers, or they have a really good project that they've done really well in, but balancing and juggling that with teaching, as well as administration, as well as life and everything like that, is a bit difficult, because they've spent 3, 4, 5 years just doing one thing, and suddenly you have to do not only 5 projects, but also teach and deal with the people telling you what to do and everything else like that. So I was really thankful for that. University of Bath was quite a high-powered place. It was, we had a kind of general policy: if you don't publish this many papers, you're essentially going to be fired. You cannot hide away at a place like that. And so you really need to be a research-focused, high-energy place. And it was a great place to advance my career, not a great place necessarily for me to advance my family life. And after a while I realized, actually I want to make a change and do something that's good not just for me, but also for the family as well. My wife is a Kiwi as well. There's something about Kiwi women that clearly draws us back here, Bill, and so we moved back to New Zealand with my daughters, and we settled down in Christchurch. We arrived just in time for the earthquakes. We didn't want to miss any of the action, and I've been here ever since. And so I guess the only thing that maybe does distinguish me as having some authority to talk here is that I've won a couple of awards. I didn't win one last year. I kind of annoyed some people in 2014 with a teaching award, so I didn't get any awards last year, but that's understandable. But still, I think looking at that, I've won something like 7 teaching awards in the 6 years I've been here. So it's a real testament, I think, to the students that they enjoy what I do. But there are things that you can do to try and help you become a better teacher. Try to engage with the students at this tertiary level to make you more engaging, or to make the content more engaging, or at least just make the students enjoy themselves a little bit more. I think another reason you should talk to me is that I think I understand the tension. The tension associated with the jobs that we do, that we are being told by people that you must get higher teaching evaluations. The problem is, I think students are terrible judges of their own learning many of the times, especially when they're just about to do their exams, and that's when we give them the teaching evaluations. Hey, you've just had 12 weeks with this guy who's tried to make you into a better student, better person, blah, 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 and now I want you to evaluate that person on their ability to communicate. Well, they don't even know how well I've communicated because they haven't done their exam, let alone put this into practice in the workplace or wherever they're going in order to see whether they have actually absorbed anything. But these are the metrics that we're using. So we've got people saying, you must be a good teacher, and I evaluate that on a scale of 1 to 5. And then we've got students who we're trying to build beyond what I would hope a scale of 1 to 5 and beyond the 12 weeks that are under my charge or whatever they are each semester to become lifelong learners, to develop them. So I know that tension, and I think there's a way of balancing that out, and I do a lot of things to balance that out, but the focus for me is still, how can I make this person a good, all-around, holistic student going forward into the workplace, academia, wherever they're planning to go. Okay? So although it is important to get those 5 out of 5s on your teaching evaluations, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. We'll see if we can work ways around that. So first up, let me just move that cursor because that's annoying me. Is there a secret to being an outstanding teacher? I don't think so. I don't think there's some magic pill that we can take. I don't think there's a 5-step program we can go through to make you an outstanding teacher. All I can say is that you can develop it. You can find out what works for you. You can find out what works for the students as well. There are many things you can do to refine the way that you engage with students and the way that you facilitate their learning. And I think at the end of the day, there are many mistakes you can learn from. I have made more mistakes than anyone else. That's why I think I am better teacher now than what I was 12 years ago when I came back to academia. Learn from your own mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes, and you will tend to get better. I think as well as you develop down your academic path, you'll find a role, you'll find a way of engaging that suits you. I have purposely kept this talk a little shorter than an hour. I don't think we're going to go for the full hour, depending on how energized I get, I guess. But I've purposely kept it short so we can chat with you guys as well. I want to hear from you. What are the tensions you're feeling? What are the questions you have? And see if I, Bill, other people in this room can help you with some ideas going forward too. Okay, so even though there's no secret, I think there are certain things that won't make you an outstanding teacher. And these are the common things I see young academics in particular pick up as a way of trying to make themselves better teachers. And I think the first one is there's no gadget or technology that's going to make you better. If you suck at teaching, you're going to carry on sucking at teaching whether you've got technology on your side or not. Okay? You need to find something that expands what you do as a teacher and use technology to support you, not to replace bad teaching. So I don't know if you've seen this thing called Prezi, but Prezi is this presentation platform which is really funky and it moves around the screen and everything like that. And if it's shown on anything more than a 50-inch screen, you kind of get a bit motion sick. Now, there are ways where Prezi is really good. If you use Prezi to show how all your slides form this big holistic pattern of engagement between different aspects, blah, 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 makes complete sense. But just to take your PowerPoint presentations, stick them on Prezi and have it move around is not going to make you a better teacher. All right? Stop trying to do it. Having a clicker does not make you a better teacher if all you do is stand behind the desk the whole time and you could physically just keep clicking the mouse. Just because it's wireless isn't making you a better teacher. One of my colleagues up in Auckland, he has this little thing that goes on your arm, little wristband thing, and the way you move your hand will change the slides. I love that idea. I want to do it. I like gadgets. It's not going to make me a better teacher, especially because I talk with my hands, so the whole thing's going to be messing up around me. But having little gadgets like that aren't necessarily going to compensate for you being a bad teacher fundamentally. So please don't think, if I do this, I'm going to be better. It doesn't really work that way. The next one I hear a lot is if you try to be someone else, you try to be something you're not, you try to copy someone that you admire, and it's always good to admire people. I admire a lot of people, but I learned a long time ago that if I'm not myself, if I'm not true to who I am, and I do not stick to true to who I am, then I'm going to suffer, and my students are going to suffer. This generation we're working with at the moment, and we're talking about the 18 to 25-year-olds, I guess, now, authenticity is important to them. They don't like being lied to. They don't generally like an inauthentic lecturer who tries to be something he or she is not. I wrote a blog post about how professors are just inherently boring. Even the coolest professor is boring, and just accept it. Just accept it. We are not as cool as the party. We are not as cool as their boyfriend or girlfriend. Let's not try and be the cool, funky professor. If you are naturally cool, some of us are, thank you. But if you're not naturally cool, don't try and be cool. All right? It's not worthwhile. Be yourself, and being yourself is going to help you down the path to not only understanding yourself and understanding where you come from, but also understanding how you can best engage with students. If you're constantly faking it the whole way through, students are going to see through it, but also it's going to tire you out and you're going to start questioning who you are as well. Doing everything students want to make them like you does not make you an outstanding teacher. it makes you a very poor teacher in my mind. If a student comes to me and says, oh, you know, I got really busy with my other assignments and I haven't done my assignment, can I have 3 days extension? It'd be really appreciated, blah, blah, blah. And I was just, oh, you know what, they're going to like me more if I said yes. Yeah, of course I will. That's actually developing quite a bad habit, isn't it? If you do that to everyone, they're going to realize that actually there are no consequences to their actions. There are no consequences associated with what they do. I don't think I've ever offered an extension in the last 6 years. If there's a really good excuse, then you can apply for an agritet. Now, the agritet system is changing here, but if there's something that's happened and it's something serious that's happened in your life, then I will happily consider a higher grade for you to compensate for what you have, but you still need to get something in on time. Okay? There is no excuse in my mind for being badly prepared when I give you an assignment at the start of the year. Now, students hate that. They absolutely hate that. They want the flexibility. They want things to revolve around them. Unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily make you an outstanding or even a good teacher if all you ever do is baby them and offer them everything on a silver platter. Providing everything a student wants doesn't make you a good teacher. It does make you likable, maybe, or it might make you a pushover. My student evaluations at the end of the year, I get one comment that kind of says something like, he's really strict. I don't like how strict he is. He yells at us when we're not paying attention and stuff like that. And then I have 3 more comments under that saying, I'm glad he doesn't take our shit because we do walk over some of the other lecturers. And so it's an interesting dichotomy between those things. I kind of relate to that, dwelling on whether students like you or not. Some people are people pleasers. They want to make sure everyone is happy. They want to make sure everyone likes them. I am concerned as to whether people like me, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it, especially if I am confident that what I'm doing is making them better. And my job here is to facilitate learning. It's to make sure that knowledge is disseminated. And that might mean that I end up pushing my students a little harder. I might end up making them think for themselves. And that might hurt. And sometimes it is a struggle for some students to break through that barrier and not just be delivered everything for them to use, to disseminate, to absorb themselves. I would like some students to come up with their own knowledge. That's part of what my mind is, what a university is about. Not just to take the, like we had in the readings, the technical knowledge, but also to learn the practical skills, practical knowledge that we have, that we can deliver. How can you learn for yourself? But if you, as an individual, dwell on this idea as, oh, I wonder if that class was good, I wonder if the students liked me, all you're going to do is start beating yourself up. It's very hard for you to actually understand whether a student likes you without actually talking to them themselves and seeing whether they enjoyed class. So sometimes I will, and students will say, no, that didn't really hit the mark so much, or I really like it if you did X, Y, Z more. But if you sit at home with a bottle of whiskey and cry into your paper bag of whiskey and say, oh, students hate me, without actually doing any research for yourself or actually talking to them, that's not very healthy. That sort of dwelling aspect on whether people like you isn't going to make you an outstanding teacher. If it does, if anything, it makes you a nervous teacher. It makes you nervous when you walk into the next classroom because all you're thinking about is, does this person like me? Is the class going to get anything out of this? Am I a fake? Have they worked out that I'm a fake yet? We'll talk about imposter syndrome later. Assume everyone hates you. And be pleasantly surprised if they don't. That's kind of my general attitude. I assume that I'm boring. I assume no one likes me. I assume my students are just there to get the 15 points out of the marketing class or whatever I'm teaching. And if they enjoy it as well, then that's good. You know, that's not to say I don't care. I still try to put effort into making this an engaging class and everything. But if I've got 250 students, I'm not going to make sure every single student loves me, because that's not only going to drain me physically, trying to catch up with every single student, it's going to drain me emotionally and spiritually. And both of those things are fundamental to your health as an individual, as an academic. Again, we'll talk about that sort of thing later. And I think finally, sacrificing yourself for your job does not necessarily make you an outstanding teacher. If you are looking at going into academia and you're looking at getting a balanced tenure track position, then we're looking at a combination of teaching, administration, service, and research. And it's very easy to put all your effort into one aspect, and that's usually teaching. Because you have students knocking on your door saying, please help me with this. Of course I'll help you with this. Anything you want, I will help you right now. And it's very easy then for your research papers and your other things to start taking a bit of a sideline. Because your research paper isn't going to start knocking on your door. You really only get the feedback at your performance review at the end of the year, where your boss kind of says, hey, you haven't actually performed that well in research. Maybe you should pick that up. While students, when they're physical, when they're human, when they're knocking on your door, it's very hard for them to say no to sometimes. I'm very bad at saying no. And it's taken a long time for me to learn to say, actually, I'm busy at the moment, come and see me, make an appointment, and I'll set aside some time for you. But sacrificing yourself, whether it's your work life, with putting research aside in order to carry on satisfying your students, or even worse, putting your family, putting your friends aside in order to try and prepare for a class or whatever, does not make you an outstanding teacher. It puts pressure on you. You focus so much on trying to be the best that in the end, you end up so drained that being the best isn't even close to where you are. Take time out. It's okay to take time out. It's okay to spend time focusing on yourself. It's very selfish, and generally people, when they become teachers, they're not doing it for the money, they're not doing it for the prestige, they're doing it because they want to give back, they want to disseminate knowledge back, they want to see that next generation grow. And it's a very selfless sort of person that goes into teaching. And when you do that, it's very hard for you to be selfish. And I've learned to be selfish over the last few years, and so I purposely am a bit more selfish now. But I still kind of turn it into teaching things. I enjoy my photography, I enjoy going out and taking photos. And a couple of weeks ago, Maya came along with me with about 17, I think, other people. We all went and had a little bit of a look at the stars and how to take photos of the stars and then just enjoy the stars. So I kind of turned it into a teaching thing anyway, even though that was meant to be my time out. But I combined my time out with what I was doing. If you are not at 100%, if you're not operating at your best, then it's impossible for you to give your best. So please always remember that. If you are not at your best right now, then maybe we need to think about something to make you better, to get you back at your best. If you're operating at less than 100%, it's going to show. If you're operating at less than 80%, you're going to start to it's going to start to take its toll on you. If you're operating at less than 60 to 50%, then things are going to have to change rapidly, because otherwise it's just downhill from there. Again, we'll talk about this later. So I don't assume or presume that I know everything. Like I said, I've made more mistakes than most people, and it's good to learn from other people as well, and so I outsourced some ideas. So I went onto Facebook, and I'm part of a large group there which is called Teaching Resources for Marketing Folk, or marketers. It started off being teaching resources for marketing dorks, and then it turned to marketing nerds, and then it turned to marketing folk, and now I think it's just marketers, you know, because people were offended at being called dorks. I'm a proud dork or a nerd. I don't even care about that. Like I said, don't try to be something you're not. I'm a nerd. And these are some of the general themes that came out from this group when I asked them, what does it make? What do you have to do to make yourself, or do you see in outstanding teachers? And the first thing, and there are these hygiene level things, there are these soft skills that you need to get right. There are elements of empathy, fairness, passion, all these things that you need to have, or people thought that you needed, in order to recognize an outstanding teacher. Enthusiasm for what you do. If you are not enthusiastic, if you don't want to be there, guess what? The 200 people or even 2 people who have turned up for your class don't want to be there either. Okay? If the person who is being paid to be there doesn't care, then the people who are paying to be there definitely don't care. There's also these hygiene factors, the basics. Get a good course outline. Get that syllabus out and make sure it covers everything. If you set expectations from the start of what is going to be in this class, what you expect from the students, things like that, life's going to be much easier. Now, if you start adapting that as time goes on, then it's going to be very confusing, because you keep changing the goalposts. You keep changing how the course is run, how it's delivered, what the assessment's going to be, whatever it might be. Try and nail that down really early on. Preferably before the class starts. I sometimes allow my students to alter the course syllabus. I say, well, this is your class. You tell me how the assessment should be run, and we debate this, we get talking about this, and I alter the assessment accordingly to what the students think they would prefer. It's always more an interesting side for me than it is for them, because then you can see how their minds work and how many people want multi-choice versus how many people want to write essays, things like that. Know the material you're going to teach. If you don't know what you're going to teach, if you don't know the stuff, then guess what? You're going to be a crap lecturer. I don't care how great you think you are at communication. If you don't know what you're teaching and someone asks a question and you don't know, then not only are you going to look like you don't know, the students aren't going to learn, but also you're going to start to lack confidence in yourself, and the students are going to start lacking confidence in you, and they're going to start to doubt you as a teacher. So I'm not saying you have to be an expert in every single facet of every single thing of your field, but at least have a really good understanding of what you are teaching. Know the content. And communicate in a manner that the audience will understand and absorb. Again, these are basics. You are going to need to be presenting to multiple groups over your lifetime. You will need to present your PhD research, whether at your proposal or at your Viva or whatever you end up doing. And you're going to be talking to a panel of experts who are going to know your story that you've presented. They're going to know your epistemological stance and everything like that. And then you're going to need to be able to talk to undergraduates, and then you're going to need to be talking to maybe postgraduates or whatever it might be. You might even be out there in the community talking, and I encourage you to do public lectures, to engage with the community with your research, to show the value you might have outside of these walls. You need to adapt your communication to the audience that you are trying to communicate to. If I use the same style, if I use the same PowerPoint slides, if I use the same engagement methods that I use for every single student, guess what? Some will get it, some won't get it, but more times than not, I will miss the mark. I have to understand the audience, I have to understand where they're coming from, and then hopefully tailor something that will engage them. Now, there are certain things that are always going to be the same. I know I talk fast, and I should slow it down and things like that, but generally I talk fast. I have very few things on my slides. This is kind of how I teach, and that doesn't change where I'm going. But if I was talking with industry, I probably won't have any words. I would probably just use images, maybe a couple of graphs, and that's about it. I also teach from time to time at the local primary school, and I used to teach at the kindergarten my kids are at, and just when I say teach, that means reading to them. I would just sit down and I would play with them, and that for them is teaching. And so I play with them, read to them, whatever it might be. I'm not going to bring a PowerPoint slide to that, am I? It just doesn't make sense. You naturally know how to engage with different age groups. Do the same thing with your teaching. So make sure you get that right. There are also these abstract or higher level issues that many people talked about. This ability to relate to your students, to know who they are, to know where they come from, to understand the world they've come from, and sort of the learning styles that they have is part of being an outstanding teacher. And think about what the students need to learn, not necessarily what you want to teach, was a key theme that kind of came up as well. Just because that's what you want to teach doesn't necessarily mean that's what they need. Doesn't mean that's what they want to learn. Doesn't mean that's necessarily what they are going to need when they enter the workforce, or whatever you are planning to develop your students into. Now, this is a bit harder. This one's a bit harder, and it means engagement not just with the material, but also engagement with community, engagement with the current theories out there, engagement with the workforce, whatever it might be. It takes a little longer. Again, I'm not so presumptuous that I know exactly everything that someone wants and needs, and so I will constantly, regularly talk to my alumni. Talk to the students that I have left 2-3 years back and say, you know, what would you love to have learned? What did I miss? What did I not do? What are you doing now that was really important to you? Are you using anything I taught you at all? Usually it's not. I kind of remember you telling some jokes and that was fun, but otherwise, no, they're better than that. But okay. Before I get into sort of the things I think are important to becoming a good teacher, or not being a bad teacher at least, I think we should preface everything I say from now on with a bit of a philosophical, higher abstract level to kind of understand where I'm from. Number one, I am here to facilitate other people's learnings. I'm not here to tell you the answers. The answers don't exist in my mind. For me, everyone's answers are going to be varied and different depending on their circumstance. So I'm here to facilitate your own understanding. So I won't say have 6 PowerPoints for every hour. That's how you become an outstanding teacher, because I don't think that exists. I don't think that's true. I remember when I started in industry, that's kind of how they used to tell us. You must have this many PowerPoints per hour, and that's how you become a great teacher. Has anyone done a Pecha Kucha talk? Those things are awful. I did one, my first one last year, and it's 20 slides, only 20 seconds per slide, and they automatically change. You don't get to decide when it changes. And no words or anything like that, just all pictures. Awful, awful thing. I've never done something like that. Now, it doesn't suit me because I like to dwell and go on tangents and things like that, but it suits a lot of people who prefer structure. Now, I don't think if we turned all academia into Pecha Kucha, I thought about doing my whole Marketing 100 class in Pecha Kucha, be done in less than an hour or something like that, and do the whole class. I don't think it's going to work. It doesn't suit the environment nor the audience, but it might be nice to have a Pecha Kucha at the start of every talk that students can look at before they come to class, say, here's a snapshot, here's a 5-minute overview or whatever it is of the class, and so I know exactly what's going to be covered. Okay? I think that would be pretty cool. But from a philosophical perspective, I'm here to facilitate your learning. I'm here to facilitate my students' learning and try to get them engaged with the material to a level that they go and develop their knowledge better as time goes on. Other people are different, perfectly fine, but this is where I'm coming from. And this other thing which I think is quite pertinent, as much as someone else might tell you this and your boss might tell you this, students are not your customers. They are not your customers. A customer is someone that we should treat in a way that they are always right. The customer's always right. You heard that one. We do everything for the customer. We make sure the customer's happy. We make sure the customer comes back and buys more stuff from us. That's not the way I look at my students at all, even though I'm from a business school and even though I'm a marketer and we kind of preach this philosophy about service dominant logic or whatever it might be. From my perspective, students are one of my many customers. Another customer I have is the government that is paying for my wages, and another customer that I have is society, who is giving me paying the taxes in order for me to have this job where I can disseminate knowledge to younger people. Another customer I have is the future employer of that student. Another customer I have is the sacrifices my parents made to me, so how can I make them proud? Another customer I have is myself, damn it. All right, I'm a customer. What is good for me? How can I teach in a way that I am happy as well? So when we focus everything on the student and saying, what can we do to make the student's experience 100% perfect? Then sometimes we sacrifice our other customers. We sacrifice ourselves. We sacrifice future employers by giving them everything they want, and the students come out knowing what Akant's taught them. We're not actually knowing how to develop knowledge themselves. We do all these things, and I think we do students a disservice when we treat them too much or baby them too much in our teaching or in our teaching practice. Now, this sometimes does mean that students don't like me, and that's okay. Maya will know this as one of my students. Sometimes we have meetings, and she goes, blah, 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 and she goes, you know, which one do you think is best? And I say, well, what do you think? And sometimes I think my students don't like to hear that. They say, no, 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 just tell me the answer. Just tell me which way to go. I say, no, what do you think is best? Yeah, I agree with that, you know. Or, no, maybe you should think about this as well. But get people to think for themselves. I want Maya to become a fantastic doctor. Once she finishes her doctoral studies, I want my other students to go out and have a fantastic academic or work experience wherever they go into. Sometimes that means putting it back on them to make them think for themselves. It is harder, it is sometimes painful, and sometimes all you want is your lecturer or your professor or whomever to say, this is what you need to do, go and do it to a high standard. That to me doesn't necessarily develop knowledge in the best way. So that's where I'm from anyway. Blah, 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 yep. So that hopefully will help you understand where I'm coming from. I think there's this false dichotomy in academic learning, teaching, whatever you might call it, between these two things here. There's this assumption that you either know your field and you are a researcher and you are a fantastic advancer of knowledge from research, or you're a fantastic teacher. You can't be both. And I think that's a false dichotomy in my mind. They are not mutually exclusive. I think there are some amazing researchers out there who can be fabulous teachers, and vice versa. A teacher who is an expert teacher becomes an expert communicator, whether it's in oral communication or whether it's written communication. Those people are able to communicate knowledge in a fantastic way. And so I like to work with other really good teachers when I'm writing, because they're able to help me understand how to communicate better in my research articles. In the same way, I am very research active, and I encourage other people around me to be research active, because I think that makes you a good teacher as well. Both of these things need to be there in my mind, for you to be an outstanding teacher. You need to know the content, but you also need to know how to communicate. Knowing the content means going to conferences, doing research, making sure you're up with the play, making sure you spend plenty of time working with other colleagues on research, making sure you read the latest things. I put read up the top in capital letters because I think it's one of the first things that gets left off the list when you're busy. You don't get time to read. You don't get time to do what you think is good for you, but also you don't get time to read and keep up with the play. You just use what you've done before. And that becomes, in my mind, a little bit of a disservice to the field if you're really trying to communicate out to students. Here's the stuff that I want to teach you. Actually, it's the stuff I prepared 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago sometimes, and I haven't read the latest material, and as a result, you're not getting the latest theories. There might be elements where there has been nothing changed in the last 20 years, that's fine, but you can still teach the basics from 20 years ago and develop the current thinking as time goes on in your teaching. Stay current with the latest material, update your material regularly. I don't update my material every week. That's a bit silly, I think that takes too much time, but I will have a good look over my material after every year. Every year I teach, and I have to teach it again. Right, let's take a look at the material. Let's see what I can update. I don't do a full course review every year. That would take too much effort in my mind. But I do make sure I improve my material on a reasonably regular basis. Knowing your audience and knowing how to communicate has multiple elements to it as well. Know who you're talking to. Know what their motivators are, know what their drivers are, know why they're there. I generally ask this question at the start of my classes. How many people are here because you're looking for an easy 15 points? And a few hands go up. How many people are here because you want to be marketing majors? A few other hands go up. More than anything, just to get them engaged, but also for me to understand who I'm talking to. If everybody is there just to get an easy class out of the way on their transcript and hopefully get an A, then I know who I'm talking to. Now, I'm not necessarily going to tailor my talk to those people. I'll probably make it harder just to piss them off, but it will change how I understand my class. If I'm teaching in an MBA class, I like to get to know them better. If I'm teaching at an undergraduate class, I like to get to know them better as well. It doesn't matter what level they are. It doesn't matter if you've got 5 students or 500 students. You can still understand your students well enough at that level. Empathy is a big one. Not just know your students, but care about your students as well. Care about your audience. Care about where they're coming from, what pressures they might have going on. I'm not saying that you should sacrifice everything for that, but it is important to have some level of empathy. I think some of the teachers out there who are very good but not outstanding sometimes don't care enough. I probably could care more, I know that, but at the same time, I'm not going to do everything a student asks. It's a fine balance between the two. Go to your colleagues' lectures. Go and sit in someone else's lectures. Just ask them. Can I come and sit in on your lecture? I'd love to hear how you present this stuff. I'd love to hear how you engage with the students. I'd love to hear or see how you use technology in your class. Okay? Most people would say yes. If they say no, maybe not a lecturer you want to sit in on anyway. Okay? Generally, most of the good lecturers out there will be happy for you to come and sit in their class and just see what it's like. Spend time chatting with your students. Get to know them. I will admit there are some teachers out here who've got a fantastic ability to remember names. I don't. I barely remember my students' names. I've been calling her Maya. He's probably called her Emma. You know, I have no idea. I'm not good with names, but I know other people. Russell is amazing with names, and he will rattle off, oh, so do you have these people in your class? I'm like, probably, yeah. Oh, yeah, I've got him for sure. I have to look up on the screen to make sure that I've got the faces right. I remember a face. Yes, I've definitely got that person. But it doesn't mean you can't chat with your students. It doesn't mean, yes, sir.
Does the university give you support for that?
Sure.
I've worked in places where we can go online and we can see all the students' faces.
Absolutely, yeah, we've got that, but I've got 250 students in my undergrad class.
I understand
I ain't got undergrad.
the numbers need. I can only learn about 7 or 8 a week.
Yep, 7.
So 250.
It's going to take, by the end of the class. Okay, here's a little tip. One of the things that students mentioned in the undergraduate survey here, and I think they've done it in other universities as well, a lot of students, especially at undergrad, feel like they're anonymous. They feel like the lecturers don't care about them as an individual. And one of the things that helps to break that is knowing students' names. And I know it's something that I'm trying to break myself and try to get to know students better. Because then you can say, oh, I remember Henny from a couple of years ago. I'll chat with her and I'll actually try and use her name. Henny. Sweet. Yes.
Okay,
I'm on fire. Yeah. I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you what I do, and then you suggest. Okay. Go on.
I'm working in a place where I have about 80 students in the course.
Mm-hmm.
And I divided them into teams. And early in the term, I invited each team to come in and talk with me for an hour.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Yep.
You sit and you talk to them, say, what is your name, where
Yep.
you come from, why
You get to know them more. Yeah.
And you meet every one of them
Yep.
for 5 minutes apiece.
5 minutes
You
apiece?
understand?
Yep.
But 5 minutes apiece goes a long
One time. Absolutely. The less onerous way that I kind of do as well, I learn about 10 people's names. And then when I say, oh yeah, Henny, Maya, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And then everyone assumes, wow, he's so good, he knows everyone's names. No, I only know 10, and I just mix it up. All right, don't do that. Get to know everybody's names. And I think the idea of sitting down and chatting with them not only helps you with knowing their names, but it helps them feel that you are connected to them at more than a $sign level, which I think a lot of universities tend to treat students as. Here's the person paying fees, now you're in, you've got this sunk cost of spending 2 years here, of course you're going to stay here for the 3rd year, we don't really care about you. I think that's an awful way of looking at students. And so trying to get to know them, even when you know that they have to be in the class, is still important. And this last thing, practice. I am not the sort of person that stands in front of a mirror and practices my lectures. That seems a bit weird to me, but some people are. Whatever works for you, practice. It is really awful getting your husband or your wife to listen to your lectures. They suffer enough being married to academics, let alone having to listen to you work as well. But at least you know they're going to be there the next day. They're not going to walk out halfway and say, quit this is bullshit, I'm not going to hang around. Your students might. Okay, we've already lost one. I don't know what I said, but she's upset with me. She's gone. No. Practice.
You're not as interesting as a toilet.
Clearly, I'm not as interesting as a toilet. Whatever's happening in the toilet right now, you know, that's the important stuff. So make sure you practice. Don't be so egotistical that you don't need more practice. Go and practice. Even if it is, how I practice generally, is that I have the slides going, and in my head, I recite what I'm going to say. I don't necessarily have a mirror where I stand there or I video myself. I hate videoing myself and looking back at it. So we'll get the video from this, but I will never watch it. I'll let other people watch it. But I do let the slideshow go in silently. I'll go through, yeah, I'll make sure I say that point, make sure I say that point. Do that a couple of times, and then it becomes more natural. It means I know what's on the next slide. And the next slide is going to be, I think, some of the tips that I have. So let's see if that's right. Look at me, I'm a genius. All right. These are what I think help you to become a good lecturer. Now, I'm a marketer, and we like to have acronyms and things like that. And so I was trying to think of an acronym. But looking at this, when we look at passion, lifelong learner, analyze, improve, care, and empathy, that actually spells place, which is a type of flatfish. I don't think that's actually a good one to use. So the place method of being a good teacher isn't exactly a good one, with an I in there as well. So it's like the fish. But I think these, for me, kind of summarize my philosophy of teaching, but also what helps me to understand how I can be a better teacher. And I'll go through each of these in a bit more depth. But the first one is passion. Something that regularly comes up from feedback from students and on my student evaluations is that he seems to be crazy passionate about what he does. He just seems to love it. And passion doesn't mean you like what you do. It means you're crazy in love with what you do. It means even when times are tough, you can't wait to talk about this. You might be really passionate about your PhD. Usually that happens in about 6-month mark. Around about the 2-year mark, you couldn't give a shit anymore. You just want to get it done, right? But around the 6-month mark, you're really excited about what you're doing. You're like, yeah, and you want to tell everyone, and everyone else isn't that excited, but they're really polite and they smile at you. And we know what that's like. Okay. But be crazy passionate about it. If you are not passionate walking into your class to teach, then it's going to be very difficult for them to pick up on that passion. And if I feel that I can get students really excited about coming to class, I've already won half the battle. If students want to come to class, if they go, yes, we've got marketing, yeah, we've got Akon talking about consumer theory, wonderful. If they can do that, then I know I've already made it much easier for them to learn. Okay? I don't think they do really think that. But if I can get them at least halfway there, that's pretty cool. I'm not necessarily passionate about the content that I'm teaching. I love the field. I love what I teach. I love the area I'm in. But when you're teaching first year and you're teaching the 4 Ps or some bullshit like that, which hasn't been used in practice for so many years, it's very hard to get passionate about it. However, I am passionate about seeing students seeing the world in a different way, to seeing students grow, to seeing students know something, to seeing students absorb something. And so that's pretty cool. So when you see that passion build up in them, that makes me passionate as well. I am not just passionate about the content, I'm also passionate about the students. Okay? Lifelong learning, I think, is crucial to you being a good teacher. You might be a fantastic teacher right now, and if you change nothing, you might be an average teacher in 5 years' time, and if you change nothing still, you might be a crap teacher in about 10 years' time. I really encourage you to keep learning, keep developing, keep improving. If you are not a lifelong learner when it comes to your teaching, it's going to be impossible for you to be an outstanding, let alone a good teacher, let alone a bad teacher. You will just be someone who someone has to endure through in order to get through the 15 points, in order to carry on with their major. You don't want to be that person. Maybe you do, but generally you don't. Use current examples. Read. Talk to students. Use examples that you think fit. Use examples that students can relate to. Like we talked at the start, those high-level things about, be relatable. That doesn't necessarily mean you hang out in the same places as students do or anything like that and try to be cool and young. Please don't do that. It's really cringeworthy. But if you can at least understand the latest things that are happening, that students might be engaging with, that will help them to engage with you as well. Teach theories and material that students will use. They will benefit far more from knowledge that is going to be useful, not just the technical stuff that they will use in the workplace, but also creating practical knowledge, practical skills that they can then go forward. I always insist on group work, and guess what? Students hate group work, right? No student likes group work because you end up sitting with the idiot who doesn't do any work and you have to carry the group, blah, 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 blah. Students hate group work. Guess what? There ain't no job on earth where you can do it on your own. You have to learn to work with idiots if you want to succeed in life. And so it might as well start on a 20% assignment with an idiot who you don't really like, and afterwards you can get rid of, because guess what? When you end up in the workforce, you'll probably be working on multi-million-dollar contracts with an idiot who won't get fired for being an idiot. You just have to tolerate them. So you might as well learn to manage that in a safer setting. Okay? This is not just about me marking less. That's a huge part of it, trust me. But it is also about teaching skills, practical knowledge that students are going to use going forward, that they will be able to draw on when they go to an interview. Whenever I was interviewing people, or even whenever I was interviewed, they would ask me about, when is the time you've had to deal with a conflict in a team? Well, actually, I opted out of all the group work in my classes, and I never did any group work because I hate group work. That's not going to make you a good employee, right? That's not going to be a skill that people are going to want. So don't just teach the technical stuff, also teach the practical skills. I think that reading that Bill gave you was excellent in that level. Make sure you analyze and improve. I debrief myself after every class, and I will debrief after this one. Think about what worked. I'm observing you as much as you're observing me, and I'll think about what jokes worked, what jokes didn't, what didn't kind of make sense when I communicated it, that sort of thing. Even if it's for 5 minutes, and it's just going, yeah, I thought that went well, or that was crap, I'm never doing that again. Okay? I've not taught this session before. This is the first time I'm ever teaching a session on how to be an outstanding teacher. So I am going to improve this by a ton next time, because I know what is going to work better next time compared to what worked this time. Find out what makes the learning experience better for the students, but also find out what makes the teaching experience better for you. What works for you? What will improve you? What didn't go well that you need to drop, and what should you start doing? What should you continue doing that seemed to work well? I call this the start, stop, continue. It's a very simple way of evaluating or debriefing after any task. What should I start doing that I haven't done before? What should I stop doing that really didn't work? And what should I continue doing that seems to be going okay? Okay? After every class, stop, continue. Bill.
You said you're not going to watch this video. Several universities have found that if they make a video of a teacher and put it in the teacher's office so the teacher can look at it later,
yep,
his privacy or her privacy,
yep,
with no threats,
yep,
the teaching ratings rise rapidly.
So watching yourself on video afterwards will lead to a huge rise in teaching?
It's this.
I think you're absolutely right.
Right.
I think you're absolutely
You see things you're doing that you wish you weren't doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I've got my hand in my pocket now, and I don't think that's that engaging.
What are you doing?
Yeah, I've got I've got a bit of fluff in there. More than anything, I'd probably hit my diet harder if I watch me back on video, that sort of thing. But there are all sorts of things. But I would encourage it. I'm a bad example of this.
I'm telling you, for them.
Absolutely.
Watching yourself.
It will. Yeah. I would. If we go back to research for a second, I learned more about how to write by reading other people's work, and not just the final journal published issue. We see the journal article and think, oh my God, how do they write something like that? They didn't. They wrote something that was 5 or 6 iterations before that. They went through 5 or 6 iterations before it even went to the editor, and then went through multiple review rounds before you saw that perfected work. Read those early drafts, which is I think you're going to do later on. Start reviewing for journals. Start reviewing for conferences. In the same way, start reviewing your own work when it comes to teaching. Start reviewing that raw stuff that no one else gets to see, and that will help you become a better teacher. Care and empathy I want to finish on. Like I said, I will be the first to admit I am not what some people would consider to be the most caring person. We've got wonderful people in our department. If you've ever met Herb, he is the warmest man you will ever meet. And if you walk up to him and say, Herb, can I have 5 minutes of your time? He will always say yes. Even if you just waste that time. And I've done that before. Just try to waste his time. Just to see if he'll snap and punch me. But he never does. He's so sweet. Russell is the same. They always have time for people. I will not have time for you. If I'm busy, I will tell you to come back. Okay? Because what is important to me is not just that you have time, but also that I have time. Because I am working on other things as well. That doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I'm balancing my care out. I'm balancing my own workload out. And students, they have time to see me. That's why I have office hours. That's why I have other things. And if you want to make an appointment with me, I will schedule some time. People walking in and just wanting to come and talk to me, that doesn't sit well with me. It takes up a lot of time if I did that. And guess what? My room will be full of students and I won't actually get any work done, sort of thing. But there is a point where you need to step back and say, I need to empathize. I need to understand the pressures that the student is going through. I need to understand where this student is coming from and what might be impacting their learning. And if you can't do that, if you're completely so cold that you say, I will only teach you in class, I will only see you in office hours, and I don't care about anything outside of that, then you might not be the sort of lecturer that they will want to approach and try to empathize with themselves, everything else like that. It becomes very, very difficult. So I have certain ways that I like to communicate with students that are much more rapid than coming in and talking to me. I'm not always in my office. I'm usually at different parts of the city or the world, or whatever it might be. But I'm always on email. And students get quite worried when I email so quickly. So I think I had a couple of emails last night at about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and I'll email them back and say that was great. Had another email at 3 o'clock this morning, and I'm a bit of an insomniac, so I replied back. My MBA student a couple of years ago emailed me his draft MBA, and I didn't reply within 45 minutes. And so he called me on my phone to say if I'm okay, because it's very weird for me not to reply so quickly, sort of thing. So you don't want to set up a way of communication that's that consistent, but you need to find a way that you can balance what your needs are to make sure you're at 100%, but also the needs of your students. But never lose that empathy side. Communicate why you teach a certain way. I tell students, you cannot get an extension because guess what? If you're applying for a contract or you're applying for a job, whatever it might be, the deadline is the deadline. I remember when I was in industry, if we had to get a client report out on Monday morning, then I needed to get it finished the Wednesday before. Not the Sunday night before, the Wednesday before, because my boss would need to read it, his or her boss would need to read it, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So the deadline might have been Monday, but the actual deadline that people want that report is far earlier. So you need to learn those skills now in a safer environment than when you go out into the business world, workforce, whatever you end up doing. Care about what they care about as well. Find out what drives them. Find out what motivates your students. Some of them are going to be motivated by marks. Very easy. And then you say, well, here's the best way to get marks. Okay? Study the material. Come to lectures. Do the readings. Engage with class. That's how you get the marks. Give them a formula. Hopefully they'll adhere to that formula. Some of them are caring more about learning. Right. Find times where you can learn. Some of the ideas that I know Herb uses, he has coffee sessions where he sits down and he says, all right, anyone who wants to come and just chat, kind of like the Preface seminars, I'm happy to sit down and chat with you. And we've done that in the past. It's great fun. For those small 5%, 10%, or whoever it might be who really want to engage beyond the lecture material or beyond the tutorial material. Find out what they care about. But there is still this important side of maintaining a professional distance. Don't ever get too close to your students. You still need to maintain professional distance. The terms that I tend to use is you can be friendly, and it's so good to be friendly with your students, but never be friends. When they're your students, it becomes very difficult for you then to provide that professional distance. You psychologically might have that professional distance in your mind, but the perception might be from other students that you don't. And when you don't have that professional distance, they might feel, well, look, this guy's favoring that person. Well, no, I'm not favoring that person. That person's doing well because he or she is spending a lot of time talking to me, developing their knowledge. But if it's assumed we're friends, then it becomes much more difficult. So you try to maintain that professional distance. You might become approachable. and you might become engaging, and students might want to come and approach you and engage with you, I make it very clear that I'm happy to talk to any of my students about anything, especially if it's at the bar or anything like that. Quite happy to have a chat with them. But I also know there's going to be a point where I'm not their counselor, I'm not their parent, and I would need to find professional help for that student. So know where that is, know when that line is, and find a way that you can do that. So find a way you can say, right, you know, what you're talking about now is really important, and we need to deal with this. But it's not something I'm skilled, knowledgeable about. But let me get you in touch with someone who is, and we're going to make sure you're going to get the help you need. Because if you want to learn about the 4 Ps, I'm the shit. I can help you with that. You want me to help you with your other issues? I can't help you. If you take that on board as well, then you start heaping pressure upon yourself as a teacher that I think goes beyond the role description that we have. Okay? That does not make you an outstanding teacher, that you suddenly become their psychologist as well. So make sure you keep that professional distance and know when it is time to say, right, that's no longer part of this course. You need to start talking with someone who's a professional. And the final thing I want to talk about is this idea that this is often a thankless job. A lot of the time we spend time alone. We don't have a lot of colleagues around us. We spend a lot of time doing our own thing and assuming, generally, because we are academics, that we do a shit job because people aren't telling us we're wonderful all the time. No, generally people will tell you if you're doing badly. They will tell you if you're doing really badly, but we assume that they're not saying anything, therefore we're awful. That's not true. It's not true at all. Take time out for yourself. Read those student emails if and when you get them. Hold on to them. Realize that you are not just teaching people in a 12-week course, but you're developing lifelong learners themselves. And I like to engage with my alumni as they leave 2-3 years down the line to see if I can find ways that, you know, we can connect, have a beer with them. I tend to add my students on Facebook once they've graduated my class, and it's good to see how they're doing. It's good to see how my former students are doing all around the world and see what they're up to. It also means that if I'm ever traveling to that place, I've got someone I can have a beer with, and I'm very lonely a lot of the time, so it's nice to have a beer with former students, even if it is a student. You know, they're the ones who are missing out. They're having a beer with their former lecturer. How sad is that? But it's nice to catch up with them, see how they're doing. I tend to hold on to some of these quotes and things that students give, whether it's in my mind or whether it's physically. I've got a little folder on my email that I keep these emails, and it's good to reflect on, because there will be times where you start realizing, oh, I'm awful at my job. I kind of suck at this. I'm an imposter. They're going to find out pretty quickly that I am no good, and they're going to fire me, or they're going to throw me out, or whatever it might be. If you're on Twitter, I just tweeted earlier an article that was written called "The Valley of Shit," and it's an article that was written for PhD students about this feeling that students feel so absorbed and succumb to all the stuff and pressures around them that they feel like they're in the valley of shit, and because they're in the valley of shit, no one wants to be near them because it's shit, you know, it smells. And so they feel like they're on their own, and they lose complete confidence in themselves, complete confidence in their work, complete hope altogether. And that's the sort of period in your PhD which every student will go through. Some people go through that valley very quickly. Some people dwell in it for so long that they actually end up quitting because they don't want to be in the valley of shit. I wish I could tell you that that feeling goes away when you become a lecturer. It really doesn't. It still happens. I wish I could tell you that it goes away when you become tenured. I don't. I still go through a few valleys of shit every year, you know, but I come out on the other end. And holding on to what students say about you as a teacher is one way to help you understand that. The last story I want to show you before we get into questions. Oh, look, I have talked far too long. My pastors told me this, actually. It wasn't even a student talking to me. And he was talking to someone, I can't remember whom. And they say, oh, you go to university. What are you studying? Oh, I'm studying marketing. Oh, did you have my friend Akant in your class? And he goes, yes, he was my lecturer. And my pastor asked the student, so what was he like as a teacher? Because my pastor's only ever seen me out in the real world, not in the professional sense. And apparently this young lady says, he reignited my love for learning again. And that's a quote that I've held on to far more than my awards. It's a quote that I've held on to far more than any promotions or anything else like that, because that's important to me. If I can leave this place and people have fallen in love with learning again, then I think I've done a good job. I think that's what makes a good teacher. You might not be able to put it on a promotion document. You might not be able to put it down on a certificate and stick it on your wall. You probably could, actually. Yeah. I don't even know who this girl is. This is third-hand knowledge. It's probably not even true. But I hold on to it because it's important to me. And it'll help you get through those times. I've talked too long.